Hey, this is Cardal, and welcome to a part of a series that I'm going to do covering the Chua or No Chua app. But I thought a good introduction would be some of the base concepts and the classes that I use in pretty much every project. And this is going to be in regards to WPF and the model view model or MVVM kind of design. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at this little demo project here, and this is going to showcase the two main functions. One is going to be commands, and the other is going to be the actual view model. So in a default project, you're going to start with everything except for this commands folder. I just added this for the future. And this main window that it creates by default, all I've done is I've added a grid with 2 rows, and I've added a text block and a button. Now the text block, as opposed to a label, is important because a text block allows you to bind the text a lot nicer. It gives you really cool formatting options, all kinds of little caveats with it. And basically, let's start off with the view model. So by normal standards, your code behind is where all of your code would be, and I would name all of the elements in here. Like I would say this is a name of my text box, right? Or text block, right? And then in here, I would be able to do my text blocks text is equal to something, right? So that's how you would assign it in the code behind. Now we don't want to use the code behind because that kind of breaks the model view model kind of design that we're going for. So we don't have to name these, and what we do is we do what's called a binding. And now in order for the binding to work, you have to be able to tell the UI when something has changed. So with a text block, what we're going to do is we're going to bind it to a string, and it's going to be in our view model. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get the amazing little thing here that I have called a view model base. So I'm just going to copy this, and I'll go over it here in a second here. So we're going to add a folder called, we'll just call this models. And I'm going to add a new class, and this is going to be called view model base. And I'm just going to replace this with mine. And I'm going to get rid of the models because we're going to use this in all kinds of cool stuff. Now we have our iNotify property change, Alt Enter, and lets us, we're going to add the using parts of it. And there we go. So we have our fancy little notify property change. So whenever we change something, we're going to call this function notify property change, and then the name of the object or the property that we're updating. And you'll see how we use this in a second. So let's save that, and we'll just build this right now, and we will we'll start with our view model. So the first thing we have to do is we have to tell our main window that we want it to use not the code behind, but we want to create an actual view model. So let's add a new folder called a view model. I cannot type it all tonight. There we go. And we're going to add a new class, and we're going to call this MainWindow view model. All right. And we will make this a public. And what we're going to do is tell it it's going to inherit from the view model base. So now, whenever I do, let's make just a public a constructor for this. And what we will do is we'll show you, let's just create our string here so that we have something to work with. So we're going to have a string that's called text block text. And then we're going to make a public version of it. Make sure we underscore this one. We're going to call this a public string called text block text. And we're going to say when we get this value, we're going to return the underscore version of it, which is the private one. And then when we set it, what we're going to do is we're going to check, does the text box text equal the value? If it's already the value, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to return. And then we're going to set the value of text block with the value, and then we're going to call our update. So we're going to do notify property change right there, the name of, and then we're going to enter in the property, right? And that's it. So now whenever we actually set this, so when we start, we're going to be do text block text is equal to click button, or we'll say we'll make an incremental counter here. All right, so we're gonna basically set it up with clicks, and then every time we do the next part, we're just gonna put a number beside that. So all right, so we want to do a add the actual view model that we've created. Now we're gonna add this to our main window. So first thing we have to do, because we have to build it so that Visual Studio knows that it exists, so that this is actually a view model we can call in our local namespace. So our namespace is WPF Foundation. So we're going to make sure that we do not have it in the regular one. We're just going to add it in here. Actually, if you really want to, you could separate it, and then what you could do is add another one in here. We'll go VM. Namespace WPF Foundation ViewModel. All right, so there's our VM. So now what we're going to do is we're going to tell it inside of our window, we're going to call the DataContext property. So window DataContext, and it is the VM, and there's our main window view model, and that is it. So now the XAML code knows that whenever I create this, which is when the program starts up, that it's going to instantiate automatically a main window view model, and it's going to attach it as the data context property of this form. So let's go ahead and build. It succeeds, so we're going to run this. And here is our text, right? So now you'll see that we don't have the text. That's because we didn't actually associate it with it. So we don't have to wait, because XAML is actually, I'm going to drag that off to the screen. We're going to bind this to here. So here's our text value for the text block. We're going to say binding, and here's our text block's text. Mode is going to be one way, because we don't need to update the value of the text blocks. It's not an input, okay? And we're going to say when it update source trigger. So when does it want to update the value? It's when the property is changed, which is what the iNotify property changed in our view model base is. So now if we look here, so now we've got clicks is in there, and we don't have a command yet. So we're not going to worry about that yet. We are going to do that now. So let's make a command. So we're going to make a command called increment value command. All right. So now we're just going to do some really basic stuff here. So these have to use iCommand, or implement iCommand. Now its interface, if we Alt Enter on here, we're going to implement the interface. So it's going to create all the stuff that it requires. So if we can execute, we're just going to tell it to return true for now, because we're not going to have any kind of weird stuff going on in the background. So what we're going to execute is a command. So we're going to instantiate this command or initialize it with a reference to our main window view model. So what we need to do is we need to make the private one. So main window view model, and we're using our view model, and this is going to be called view model. And then we're going to make a public increment value command, and we're going to pass in the main window view model, and we're going to just pass in a property, and then we're going to set the view model to the VM parameter that we passed it. So now what we can do in our execute is we're going to say view model, and I don't have the command yet. We're going to create that in a second. We're just going to call add a number. All right. So let's go into our view model here. So first off, let's make a region. This is going to be called UI components. And make this look a little nicer. And we will minimize that, get it out of the way. All right, so then we're going to go region commands and region, and we're going to make a public, and we called it increment value command, and we're going to use our commands value or namespace. Increment the value command, we're going to call it increment value, and we give it a public get and set. So in our constructor, now what we do is we say increment value, and we're going to make it a new increment value command, and we're going to pass in this, which is our current view model. So now when it loads, it's going to create a new command, pass this instance to our command, which is going to set the view model so that we can do this function. So let's make the function, and we're going to go, we don't need the commands anymore. So now what we're going to do is we're going to make a region called command functions in the region, and we're going to call a public void add value. What did we call it? We said, oh, add a number. Add a number. There we go. Add a number. And we are going to create a integer of number, sure. And we'll just give it as 0. Okay. Let's go ahead and do this. Come on. If I can type properly. Really? There we go. Clicks. And we want number in the clicks. And then we're just going to go number plus plus. And then we are going to go text block text is equal to, and we want to go clicks number like that. And we're just going to increment the number and set the text again, right? So that is our awesome little function here. There we go. So now what happens when we build this and we run this? We forgot to do something. Oh my goodness. Add a number. There we go. All right, now we'll run it. Happens when you mistype stuff. All right, so you see we have click 0. So now what I have to do is I want to assign that command to this button. Right now it does nothing. So we'll move that off to the side. We'll go back to our XAML, and we're going to do a command. We're going to say it's in the binding, and it is increment value. And then when I come in here and I click this, every time I click, it goes up. So that is the kind of the general idea of the, passing in a data context to a command so that you can access a function on that data context that you wish. And that's the way that I've been doing a lot of my programs. It just makes it a lot easier. Any command that you want to run a function on, you could just pass it in, and it has direct access to that public function that you created. So that is essentially the, we need to give this some text here. Click to add a number. There we go. So yeah, that is the essentials of how MVVM is kind of working in the way that I do my projects. So I hope that kind of helps you. I will have the source in the description below for this entire project so that you can see all of the code. I welcome you to write it from scratch yourself and see if you can get it to work by following along. And that way you're not just copy and pasting code, so that you actually kind of understand how this actually works. So yeah, in the next set of videos, we're going to go through Chua or no Chua, and we will go over the functions and the process of making that application.